I have returned. Greetings and welcome, Lore Masters. I am Sigmar's Lorekeeper. Welcome to my upload schedule so random that it would give Tzeentch an aneurysm. Today I have something special for you. We're going to try something a bit different. I'm taking a break from my endless perusal through the archives here in High Azir, and I'm going to do something I've wanted to do since I created this channel. When I'm not reading through endless tomes of histories in the mortal realms, or spending hours hunched over my desk like a ghoul painting my plastic dolls, I happen to be the dungeon master of my very own D&D campaign. Hold your applause please, I am merely an amateur. But D&D has been one of my main hobbies for the past few years, and as both a player and a DM, I find myself dealing with the ever-beloved alignment system. Yeah, I know, I hate it too. Today will be very fun, and it's a topic that I've been bouncing around my head since before I even created the channel in the first place. Categorizing the factions of Age of Sigmar into the D&D alignment chart. It's a daunting task and is definitely going to be the longest video I produce yet, but a bit more laid back and slightly less scripted. For those of you that don't know the intricate and annoyingly convoluted system that is the moral alignment of Dungeons & Dragons, let's quickly explain. The alignment system is a categorization on a character, creature, or monster's view on the dichotomies of the concepts of law versus chaos and good versus evil. It kind of represents their outlook on life and their principles. There are 9 alignments that we're going to work with today, the classics if you will. The real difference between them is whether they're good or evil, pretty self-explanatory, and lawful or chaotic, which is slightly more nuanced. Being lawful doesn't make you good, it just means you follow strict rules or a code. This can be a legal code, a moral one, or even one imposed on you by society. See, it doesn't make you good, you can lawfully follow a strict code, but still murder millions, you're just clean about it. And being chaotic doesn't mean you're bad, it just means you do things however you want. It's not the same as a personal code because being chaotic can mean doing whatever you want, changed at the drop of a hat, and you don't care to follow the law or morals as long as you get the desired outcome. Instead of explaining each one individually, I'll just explain my reasoning when I slap a faction into one of the 9. So let's not waste any more time and get into it. Let's start off easy, and by the way, I'm not going in any particular order, but I'll just be jumping around the alignments, so don't think you can skip around to your main, watch the whole video please. And I will be doing the order of order, chaos, destruction, and death to keep me a bit more tied up. First up, a real easy one, the Seraphon. But it starts off with one you might not expect. I'm going to put them into chaotic neutral. You see, I initially wanted them in lawful neutral since they follow the Great Plan, but I realized the Great Plan isn't a code or methodology upon further research, but an end goal, and that end goal is destroying chaos. They technically do good acts, but that's only because killing chaos is generally seen as a good thing to do in the mortal realms. But the important part is they don't do it because it's good. They don't even particularly like the other Order factions. They get along because they all hate chaos, but even the other Order factions are wary of the Seraphon, because all it takes is one Slawn Star Master saying Hammerhall is in the way of the Great Plan, and hundreds of thousands of angry lizards are going to try to wipe it off the map. They're not good for good's sake. They only truly care about eliminating chaos because what the Old Ones told them to do. And if anyone else gets in the way of that, or is deemed a threat to the Great Plan, sucks to suck. The chaotic part of their alignment comes from the fact that the Great Plan isn't precise. Every Slann has their own interpretation, the only commonality is that chaos needs to die. But no 2 star hosts agree, and what they do comes down to the individual Slann themselves. Next up, let's do the Skaven. This one is pretty easy and requires little to no explanation. They are chaotic evil, like come on. Each Skaven is undeniably evil inherently, and they love being tricksy and little assholes. Nothing brings them more joy than orbitally nuking a small human settlement, or unleashing hundreds of mutated monstrosities into an elven city. Each individual also has so much free will that they think they're the pinnacle of Skavendom, and will take the first opportunity to backstab, assassinate, or frame someone else to get more power themselves. They are the textbook definition, the prime example of chaotic evil in the Age of Sigmar universe. Now let's do destruction next, and how about the Auric War Clans? This one is a bit of a two-parter since I am a strong believer in separating the Ironjawz and Kruleboyz, and it's even more telling for this list. So let's do the cruelest of boys first. Of the 2 Auric races, they clearly fit into the evil category. They do take genuine personal joy in others' suffering, mostly in the form of laughing their asses off, and if they can inconvenience you in any way before a fight even starts, they will laugh even while losing, be it making a racket the night before to make sure they get no sleep, or setting traps so that the flanking cavalry gets impaled on the charge. They will have a fun time either way. I think that this firmly places them into the neutral evil category, which is contrasted by their buffer, angrier cousins, the Ironjawz. There's a fundamental difference between why these 2 greenies do what they do. While they both beat the crap out of anyone they can get their hands on, they do it for very different reasons. Ironjawz are in the fight for the sheer vibe of it. If there are skulls to get crumped and asses to kick, they're there. There's something to admire about the indiscriminate scrapping. There's no real goal other than tearing down cities and fighting people worth fighting. I wouldn't call them good by any means, don't get me wrong, but they don't exactly fit as evil either. And other than Gordrak, there's no unity in their missions and battles. So while I'm trying to fill out every category, I have to firmly put them into chaotic neutral right next to the Seraphon, which one of them isn't going to be too happy about. Now for the first death faction, I will resist doing my beloved Flesh Eater courts, and I'll do the vampires of the Soulblight Gravelords. Now we're starting to dip into the ones that I find weirdly complicated. The Soulblight Gravelords organization is a tricky one, since most of them aren't really sentient. The actual skeleton zombies and half-dead wolves, that is. So I'm going to think more so about the actual not-so-living, not-so-breathing vampires that head their societies. And I think this gives us our first lawful evil faction. I mean, with the fact that their most functioning dynasties farm other sentient beings for food and dream of ruling over them while spreading undeath to every corner of the realms, they have a very organized hierarchy of power spreading down from the Great Legions, down to the dynasties, and down to the courts of lesser vampire lords and white kings. They treat devouring people and spreading curses like a good old traditional military campaign, which I think firmly places them into lawful evil. Back again with order, let's do the Cities of Sigmar, one of the factions I've talked the least about. The good old humans, down-to-earth peeps, the purity of the indomitable human spirit. It seems like a bit of a cop-out to just slap them into lawful good just because they're the good guys. So I want to look into what happens in a free city. The Cities of Sigmar are a hodgepodge of religious zealotry, democratic governance, and industrial greed and corruption. For every just and good grand conclave, there's an underground black market that trades in the most nefarious of merchandise. But it should be said that the overall goals and intentions of the free cities as a whole is to reclaim the realms from the grips of chaos, death, and destruction. They are based on justice, opportunity, and diversity. Yeah, these systems aren't perfect, and there's a lot of xenophobia and corruption and stuff, but the Cities of Sigmar are undeniably a force for good in the hellscape that is the mortal realms. I think because of at least the attempt at order and justice, with a little bit of selfishness and corruption on the side, I'll hesitantly place them into neutral good. They want to do good and spread order throughout the realms, but sometimes it's scary out there, and the cities need to protect themselves. Rounding back out with destruction, let's do the Gloomspite Gitz. The Gitz are also fairly simple. The bad moon is an influence that makes these lovably gruesome greenies absolute psychopaths. They want to be the bringers of the Everdank and be the rulers of the surface world under the light of the bad moon. They're happy as hell to cause suffering, and just like their taller, cruel cousins, they will laugh their ass off while shanking you. Spreading destruction in the name of Gorka Morka and corrupting your mind and lungs with fungal spores is the biggest joke to them. Unlike Grand Alliance Order, the Destruction factions are pretty alike in the sense that they don't care who they're going up against. For the Gitz in particular, it doesn't matter whether you're human, elvish, or a fellow Git. Being a victim of the bad moon is hilarious either way, although most of them do take particular pleasure in screwing over the Dwarden. I guess some rivalries never die. All this being said, I think this is a good enough reason to place them into neutral evil right next to the Kruleboyz. Up next for death, Nighthaunt. Now, the Nighthaunt aren't just bedsheet ghosts. I mean, they are bedsheet ghosts in the most literal sense, but they do have some form of a mind. They're created directly by Nagash or one of his servants from the souls of the fallen, and they're so tortured by the magic that it makes them have a single-minded goal to drag every living being into the realm of death, doing Nagash's bidding in the most gruesome sense. They are entirely obedient to their creators, and that obedience usually comes in the form of causing as much physical and mental torment into the living. They're purely an army for combat. They don't hold territory or create kingdoms in the same way others do. They float from place to turn everything into another ghost to join the ranks. Now, even though this may seem chaotic in a sense, I want to put them into neutral evil as well. They don't seek to cause mayhem mindlessly and for no reason like some others, beasts of chaos. They also don't care about procedure and rules. They're merely a way to spread death in its purest form to the living. If they wandered into a procession of OC Boner Boys, they wouldn't exactly attack out of nowhere. Since those are friendly undead homies, there would be no need to attack unless they had some other reason or orders to do so. Although, I guess for anything other than the tabletop, there really is no reason for the OBR and Nighthaunt to fight. Unless the ghosts were attacking a human settlement that was being taxed by the OBR, I guess. Well, in the Age of Sigmar, there's always a reason to fight, but you get my point. So neutral evil it is. Now let's do a faction I haven't talked about at all, I don't think, on this channel yet, so how about the Order faction that I do not think belongs in Order at all? The Daughters of Khaine. Now, I'm maybe a bit biased because if you know me, I don't like elves, and these are a flavor of elf. But I don't think many of you are going to disagree with lawful evil. The only thing that even makes them an Order faction in the first place is that they believe in civilization and creating ordered societies. And they try to get along with others, but they never do. I mean, they just took a city from the Free Cities, and the only reason Sigmar doesn't chuck a Stormhost at them is because fighting Dami-Mami Morathi is more trouble than it's worth. They're slightly more useful as allies. And don't get me wrong, I actually love the faction, even though they're elves, but I just don't know why they're in Grand Alliance Order. Okay, but aside from turning on the forces of order when the wind shifts the wrong way, what is the intent behind the actions of Morathi's followers? Well, Morathi's a secretive leader. It's not super duper clear what her end goal is, but her ascension and gathering as much worship as possible is definitely up on her to-do list. She mainly wants to just spread her murder cult and expand her influence. Her actions may result in good outcomes, since all elves hate chaos, especially Slaanesh, but her goals are never in the favor of the forces of order. They're just convenient allies. Plus, the factions of death and destruction are way less comfortable company. But I am really comfortable placing them into lawful evil. An argument for lawful neutral can be made, so I'll just put these murderous ladies right in the middle. For something a little simpler again, let's do the Slaves to Darkness. Now, I think STD... God, that's an unfortunate acronym. The Slaves to Darkness are the de facto chaos faction spreading chaos for chaos's sake. Now, I know it's true that not every single person that is a part of Archaon's endless armies is inherently evil. God Eater's Son is an example of this. Great book, by the way. I may cover it when I start covering stories in Black Library novels, but anyways. I know that some followers of the Dark Gods are unwilling, or didn't quite know what they got themselves into, or have genuine motivations, and the Dark Gods were just a means to an end. I know all this, so don't get on my ass when I say that the Slaves to Darkness are an evil faction. Archaon and Be'lakor's goals, not to mention the Chaos Gods themselves, is to pull an End Times Part 2 and destroy the realms. In the best case scenario, they are neutral evil, and for almost every description of the category, they almost perfectly fit it. They will make alliances or break them if it furthers what they want. They obviously have zero qualms about murdering anyone and everyone, but they don't have the same restraint to sometimes not so chaos. The armies of the Everchosen have only one goal, and it's to constantly spread chaos, so I'll put them into neutral evil, dipping their toes into chaotic evil. They have more self-control than the Skaven, but man is that a low bar. Okay, the table is starting to fill out a bit better, a bit heavy on the neutral evil, but let's do the Ogor Mawtribes next. Now, the Ogres are in kind of the same boat as the Ironjawz. They don't discriminate in whose ass they kick, and they are truly only motivated by their ever-empty bellies. If it wasn't for the curse in their tummies, they'd probably just be really good mercenaries, lending their extremely girthy services to the highest bidder. So I will factor that into my decision. They are very self-motivated, whatever the local tyrant wants is what goes. No two have the same agenda other than get all that money and fill those bellies. What a Mawtribe does is on a whim. They might fight allied with the city of Sigmar to kill and eat some orcs and then turn on the humans to eat them too. Or they'll just move on and fight somewhere else. I'd confidently say that they are chaotic neutral. And if it wasn't for their ravenous hunger, they'd probably be some pretty decent mercenaries for hire. So for the final faction today, let's do the Flesh Eater Courts, my beloved. Okay, I actually don't want to put them into evil at all. I know, it's pretty wild for a group known as the Cannibal Court, but if you haven't noticed, I focus more on the intent behind the actions, the overall goal or plan, the grand scheme of things, if you will. And while yes, they eat other sentient beings as a part of their curse, they don't know that that's what they're doing. The same way the Seraphon weren't in the good category just because their actions resulted in good outcomes, I'm not going to put the Flesh Eaters into evil. Alright, here's a hot take. I'm going to say that the Flesh Eater Courts are our first lawful good faction. Yes, I know it sounds crazy that the ghouls that eat humans be lawful good, but I can explain. The main reason comes down to the curse that afflicts them all, the Grand Delusion. As I've said with some other factions so far, I'm not so interested in the result of a group's actions so much as I care about the intent, reasoning, and worldview. Yes, they swarm everyone in ghouls and monsters and gleefully devour their flesh, but the key is they don't know that, at least the vast majority of them. They think they are noble, just knights and men-at-arms fighting injustice and darkness in the realms. They believe themselves kings and lords, saving the world through their action, and in the few examples we have of the delusion breaking in their minds, they tend to go crazy and off themselves or each other out of disgust and horror. I think this and their strict worship and following of the Summer King makes them the first and only lawful good faction so far. Okay, I did want to do all the factions in one video, but I tend to talk too much if you haven't noticed, so I'll be splitting the video up into 2 parts. Part 2 will be coming out after next week's video, which I'm already editing. I think a good place to leave off is perfectly halfway, 12 out of 24. The chart is filling up nicely, so let's take a look. A bit heavy in chaotic neutral and neutral evil, but let's hope the rest of the categories fill up more next time. I'm hoping every category will have at least one faction in them, plus a 2-parter means that you have to come back for the next one. So make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe so you don't miss out on part 2. If you have any disagreements or your own ideas for factions that I haven't covered yet, comment below to feed the YouTube algorithm. Do you think I'm wrong, or right like I always am? Let me know. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. I am Sigmar's Lorekeeper, and I'll see you in the next one.